Happy Friday, Ghosties. I'm Macy.
And I'm Natalie.
And today we're getting weird by returning to a topic.
Okay, as opposed to every other day?
Well, this just feels extra weird because we're returning to a topic that we briefly touched on in a previous episode. We're talking about Skinwalker Ranch.
Dun, dun, dun.
Which, by the way, for you people who hate to hear that word, I'm going to try my best to refer to it as the ranch.
Or SW.
As much as possible. But anyway, it's a place shrouded in mystery. It has been a topic of conversation for paranormal believers and skeptics alike for decades. And as many of you may know, has its own show on the History Channel, exploring some of the unexplainable phenomenon reported over the years. Aliens, portals, cryptids, interdimensional beings. It's all unexplained. It is super interesting, and I'm ready to jump into it with you.
Oh, I'm very excited. And we have a great tea that I'm going to probably drink all of. I'm ready to go.
It's a Republic of Tea, the People's Green Tea. This is one of Natalie's top.
It really is. It really is. I just keep coming back to it.
It's light. It's refreshing.
I could drink it every day. So let's go.
Yep, great tea as always.
Always.
So one of the main sources I used for this episode was a book called Hunt for the Skinwalker by journalist George Knapp and biochemist Colm Kelleher. And I mentioned this in our episode that we talked about this briefly. Knapp and Kelleher spent a decent amount of time researching and covering the events that happened on the ranch in the late 90s. The book was super interesting, so if you want to hear more in the way of details and theories, I definitely suggest you pick it up for yourself. It's an easy read, super fun. Also, if you want more on the topic, there are tons of places that you can go if you're interested. Beyond the book, there is a documentary by the same name, as well as the show called The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch on the History Channel, which goes through some investigations and experiments conducted at the ranch. It has 5 seasons, I believe.
What?
Yes, I think it's still going. And the ranch has a website where you can sign up for more behind the scenes and like more detail about what they're doing. I read somewhere that they only show about 10% of what they're actually doing on the show. And of course it's like played up for dramatics.
Yeah,
like
Ghost Hunters type stuff.
They can't have a show if like nothing happens. Like today we did this and nothing happened.
Yeah.
See us next week. But you can sign up and pay. It's kind of like a little membership where you can be like an insider.
That is really cool. Not sponsored. But that's really cool. I don't know. You're like saying, hey, they do this. It's very cool. But
I like to provide all the details.
I didn't know that there was a show with 5 seasons. When you said there's a show, I was like, oh, they had a couple episodes in like 2010.
No. And it started in 2020, 2021.
What? I didn't think it was going to be that recent. That's really interesting.
Oh, yeah. Very recent.
I would like to watch.
I'm going through the timeline.
Okay.
Here. So this is your introduction. And I just know some of you are going to be super interested. So I figured I'd put that out there. It is intriguing. I'd like to watch the show. I've seen clips and bits and pieces here and there, but I've never watched a full episode. I am intrigued. You might be after this for sure.
Oh gosh, okay.
This ranch is a 512-acre property in Ballard, Utah, located in a place called the Uintah Basin. It borders the Uintah and Ouray Reservation, and it has been the site of many strange and unexplainable observations for centuries at this point. It is and has been a cattle ranch for many generations, but its infamy and intrigue goes well beyond the routine of cattle ranching of yesterday or today. It is considered by many to be the, quote, most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot in the world, and has been studied by near billionaire-run scientific operations as well as the Pentagon for a time.
Whoa, okay.
It's the site of not only creature and cryptid encounters, as you can probably tell by its name, but also several unexplainable cattle mutilations, sightings of flying, glowing orbs, and other unidentified aerial phenomenon, poltergeist activity, electronic malfunctions, electromagnetic interferences, and any number of paranormal happenings that you could possibly think of. It's like a grab bag.
spot.
Yes. The official documentation of the encounters with strange beasts and other paranormal activity began when the Shermans took ownership of the property in the 90s. But the history of this place and its surrounding area goes back much further than this.
What do you think about the theory that the aliens are in the ocean?
I have heard that. I find it very interesting and wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, makes sense.
There's a
to
lot.
Me.
So I'm going to say this later, but it works here too. Some of the sightings saw crafts go down into the water and come out.
Yeah,
here.
Man. I don't know. We know my fear of the ocean, and it's just so
It's not
unknown.
the ocean though, because it's Utah. But
okay, I'm afraid of water.
Big bodies of water, yeah.
I don't even like a puddle, so I'm not a fan.
And by the end, I'll give you my take. As usual.
I'm just gonna sit back and listen.
No. Please keep talking.
because I have
Thoughts on many things?
yes, many thoughts on many things.
Get them all out. I want to hear them. As I said, the ranch is located in the Uintah Basin, a 3-county area of eastern Utah, about 150 miles east of Salt Lake City. It is a place known for UFO activity. Some even refer to it as UFO Alley. So some really like big enthusiasts call it UFO Alley because you're bound to see something here.
Since we talked about the
Betty and Barney Hill?
yes, it like has become a real solid fear in my mind when I'm driving at night by myself. What if I get abducted by aliens? It's not even people anymore that I'm thinking about.
It's
aliens.
Put pedal to the metal, man, and just try to get out of there.
Like they can't just like beam me up like a cow.
And
they'll take me.
And hope that they wipe your memory, like Men in Black style.
I wish I could do that now to some things. I just want to forget.
I was thinking about this literally yesterday, so I feel you.
Ignorance is bliss. I would like to be stupid to the world. It would be so peaceful.
Oh, yeah. I'd be a lot less stressed. Anyway, surrounded by wilderness, the reservation, and another known hotspot called Bottle Alley. The entire area surrounding the ranch is a place UFO enthusiasts and the curious flock to get their own sightings or encounters, and the legends go back even further than the ranch itself. Bottle Hollow, for example, is a very large man-made reservoir on Ute land that butts up right against the ranch, so it's literally right there.
Mm-hmm.
There have been several documented sightings at the reservoir alone, including in 1998 when a police officer claimed to see a large glowing light fly over and plunge down into the water, only to reemerge and fly off into the sky moments later. And again, in 2002, several young men claimed to have seen a bright blue ball of light enter the water late one night. And this isn't the only alien or broadly paranormal activity spotted by people living in the vicinity, not by a long shot. It spans decades.
We should go.
Okay.
Would you go?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I'd go yet. I don't know anything about
Just
it.
with
I've
a
been
pair of
interrupting.
binoculars, and you can't go to the ranch.
Oh.
It is not open for tours because they are conducting experiments there. So you can't go unless you are invited in by the people who own it and run it.
You know what movie I started to watch the other day and fell asleep watching? Paul.
Oh my gosh. I haven't seen that in so long. It's a
You
weird
shouldn't.
one. It's funny. It's weird.
We watched it too young.
As many of the things we've seen.
Yeah.
Anyway, what were we saying?
Paul?
No, okay, yes. Lots and lots of people in this area have seen UFOs.
Mhm.
Those are just 2 examples of a myriad of examples. For a little backstory before we get to the main event, of course, like all land in America, the area first belonged to the natives. But the first time we have written documentation of any strange occurrences happening along the bounds of the ranch was in 1776, when the Dominguez and Escalante expedition made their way along Skinwalker Ridge, which is what it's called today. I don't believe it was called that then. Franciscan missionary Silvestre Velez de Escalante wrote of seeing strange fireballs in the sky over his campfire. And according to the Skinwalker Ranch website, there were a number of other European explorations that came through the area and detailed strange occurrences just like this one. So even back in the 1700s, the Europeans were seeing some stuff.
That is a long time ago.
And I'm assuming prior to this it was seen. It's just not written.
Yeah.
In written record.
Is this...
Have you seen Ancient Aliens?
I have. When they talk about lights in the sky, is it always UFOs or could it be like meteors or just things?
That's possible.
Space things?
It's possible. Meteors
I
are
always
possible.
Think about that.
They have meteors in Europe, so it's not like that's not something they've ever
Well,
seen though.
That's a good point. That's a great point. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like they might know, but I don't know how far along we were in astronomy then at that point. The Northern Ute Reservation was established by presidential decree in 1860, and several bands of the tribe were relocated by the U.S. government onto the reservation. In that same year, the Ute began fighting with the Navajo, and this is where some believe that legend of flesh pedestrians, or as someone called it, epidermis pacers.
Epidermis pacers.
I
That's
like
a
that
good one.
In the area came from. Now, we talked about these evil beings in our episode dedicated to the topic, so if you want to go back and watch that, it's episode 31. It was really creepy. We had some really creepy stories in that one, so highly recommend. But as a brief overview, epidermis pacers are witches from the Dene or Navajo people. They are evil and perform vile practices in order to be able to transform into the skins of an animal that they have killed themselves. They are known to be just very evil and only out for themselves, doing whatever they have to gain power and whatever it is they deem necessary for their own selfish needs.
Sounds familiar.
But the story goes that when the Ute fought against the Navajo and even participated in the slave trade with the Spanish, the Navajo enacted their revenge by cursing the Ute lands and sending these beings into their midst. These evildoers would enact violence and terrorize the Utes, causing harm in any way that they could. And the sightings of large beasts in and around the reservation, so say the legends, are sightings of these epidermis pacers. Though none of this is proven, of course, and could only be legends told to either understand what has been seen or for a good thrill, we'll never really know.
Who knows?
I also read somewhere that they were like, the Navajo people don't really associate with them. And I mean, that's true. That doesn't even make sense that they would, because they're evil. They're horrible, horrible people that I don't think the Navajo would even want them a part of their community. So I don't know why they would team up with them to go enact revenge, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not a part of any Native American tribe, so I don't know any of the legends firsthand.
Comment below if you know.
So in 1886, the U.S. military finalized their construction on nearby Fort Duchesne, which was in operation until 1912. So there was a U.S. military fort right there. It's also in 1886 when the Myers family purchased the property that we know today as Skinwalker Ranch. Kenneth and Edith Myers owned the property for many years, and despite what the next owners have to say about it, their nephew Garth, who claimed to have spent lots of time out on the ranch with his aunt and uncle, disputes the claims that were made later on and says that he never experienced anything strange while out at the ranch, and said that to him it seems most of the stories were like overblown or vamped up for publicity's sake. Contrary to this, though, are the accounts of people living in the area claiming to hear and see strange phenomenon almost immediately upon moving onto their new land. So when people started settling the land, it was like almost immediate.
The only Garth I would ever trust is Brooks.
Okay.
What's his credentials? Actually, I don't know if Garth Brooks has ever said anything bad, but I like Neon Moon, so.
Their music's not too shabby. So one local...
so stupid. I just had to tell you.
One local newspaper reported on some of these happenings in 1906 in an article titled, quote, "Rumblings heard in Uintah Basin. Strange noises cause new settlers much uneasiness." It read in part, quote, "Many residents of Utah and the East who have been in the Uintah Basin have noticed with wonder the occasional rumblings, resembling explosions or distant thunder, that can be heard throughout the section at intervals every calm day and night. Homesteaders have heard these muffled detonations every quiet day since the former Uintah Indian Reservation was opened to settlement over 5 years ago, and have become so familiar with them that they have long since ceased to pay any attention to what seems most unusual or alarming to strangers, from the fact that the mysterious noise is heard just as frequently in winter as in summer, and that the volume of the sound remains almost constant from the beginning to the end of the 5 to 15 seconds it lasts, and that there are never any single isolated reports. The explanations of distant thunder or blasts have been abandoned. It has been reported on that strange noises and things are happening already.
Okay, I'll save my questions to the
This was
end.
also in the time when Fort Duchesne was open. So could they have been testing weaponry, doing things like that?
That's
It's
what I was going to
possible.
say. Yeah.
Because, I mean, the government has their secrets.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but I don't know. The newspaper was writing about it and saying it's happened so frequently that people are just like, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, but that was my first guess.
Strange occurrences continued on for residents in the Uintah Basin. Several residents reported seeing both UFOs and strange creatures resembling large wolves, and even compared to Sasquatch throughout the mid-1900s. Is Bigfoot around? Maybe.
Dude, I'm ready for the episode, but I'm going to be really disappointed if you get on this podcast, look me in my face and be like, Bigfoot's not real, dude.
Okay, well, I have not listened to or read enough about it to form an opinion yet, so.
Neither have I, but I have an opinion. And that's unlike me.
I find it intriguing.
I do too.
Either way, because even if it's just a man in a suit, several men in several different suits prancing around, that's intriguing. Why?
Hey.
I'd like to know. In the 1950s, a local high school science teacher named Joseph Jr. Hicks began keeping track of and cataloging stories from people who lived in the basin about UFO activity. He and Dr. Frank Salisbury, the head of the plant science department at Utah State University, co-authored a book titled The Utah UFO Display in 1974, which documented experience after experience of people seeing strange lights in the sky. I want to say it was over like 400 experiences. Don't quote me on that. It's just my memory, and my memory is flawed. Some even sounding a bit like what Betty and Barney Hill had seen, though with much less of an impact. All the way in New Hampshire. So very vast difference in location. So things like strange belt-shaped lights and the occasional image of what appeared to be beings inside. Possibly.
Let's
leave it there.
I'll believe it.
Several of those featured in Hicks and Salisbury's book, particularly in the 2010 edition, were owners of properties that neighbored Skinwalker Ranch. One, John Garcia, claimed to see an orange object the size of a house floating above his fence before shooting up into the sky and out of sight.
That's huge. I was thinking like a little round light.
No.
The size of a house.
Some people have claimed to see things that are like several football fields long and large in the sky.
I'd have to be put away somewhere. I'd have to be put down.
I would think that we were under attack.
Yeah.
Personally.
Or I would think that I was just going crazy, and then I would have to be...
the Death Star is landing on our planet. Like, we need to go.
It'll have to put me in a cabinet. Just like,
I don't
hide
know
me
where,
away.
but we need to go.
Yeah.
Charles Wynn claimed to be out one night when he saw a bright light that seemed to come straight at him. He ran for his life before dropping down into a ditch of water, taking cover. So they are, or some of them seem to be interested at the very least, interested in the people who are observing them. Stories like this have persisted in and around the ranch. And in 1992, when the Sherman family bought the property, they had no clue what they were getting into, or that they'd be a part of the story of a decades-long scientific investigation into strange and unexplainable phenomenon. When Terry and Gwen Sherman, along with their son and daughter, they were young. I think the son may have been a young teenager, and the daughter was younger than that, decided to move from their home in New Mexico, they found the ranch in the Uintah Basin and thought this was their chance to live the dream. They were looking for a way to leave their busy lives that they led in a small town for a more remote location where their lives could stay private and their cattle ranching could thrive. They were kind of sick and tired of the same small town business. Everyone knows your business. Everyone's involved. There's lots of drama, you know. So they wanted to get away. And finding this property was the way. I mean, it was out in the middle of nowhere. 500, I think at that time it was like 418 acres. Terry Sherman was an excellent rancher, owning and breeding cattle for many years. In fact, when most of the families around them were losing close to 4% of their herd in a year, they would claim a rough year if they lost around 1%. So he was very good at husbandry of the cattle that he raised and very good at keeping his herd.
Cool.
If you know anything about cattle ranching.
Don't, but sounds riveting.
They knew what they were doing and wanted nothing more than to build their dream life out in the Uintah Basin. It seemed like the perfect place for them. They were given one stipulation before buying the property, or this is the legend. They weren't allowed to dig into the land without contacting the previous owners first. Though I read somewhere that Garth disputed that and was like, I never told them that. I don't know. Who's to believe here?
That's a strange thing that I would not agree to.
Yeah, it's like, no.
Like, you call like the city or whatever before you dig in case you hit, you know, power lines or whatever.
Water or something.
I'm not calling the previous owner. What a strange thing. That sounds like you're a murderer.
Yeah, like you might dig up my bodies.
Yes.
I know that there are some cases where you sell the land but not the mineral rights. So you can sell a piece of land to someone, but if they drill for oil or they find some kind of mineral mine underneath, the previous owner who has the mineral rights and the oil rights and stuff would get all of the royalties and the money from that.
Bro,
And
everything is made up. How does that even
run.
work?
I don't know. Again, you can decide whether or not you want to believe that, but that is part of the lore, part of the legend, that they were not allowed to dig without contacting the owners first.
And see, and if Garth is disputing that, maybe he is a murderer.
In one source. Yeah, he's like, no, definitely. I had nothing buried there.
Yeah.
Don't look.
Don't worry.
I didn't have anything.
Don't let me and Kayla get in there with our shovels.
We don't need to get into that.
Sorry. Me and Kayla used to dig holes for fun. Huge holes.
Hey, I helped. But like the one y'all dug was like 6 feet deep.
We were in the mines. Hi, Kayla.
The children yearn for the mines. Anyway, they, of course, find this strange, but take the opportunity anyway. And in the short time that they actually own the property, they received much more than they bargained for. From the first day that the Shermans arrived on the property, something just didn't seem right. When they first walked into the home, they noticed that every single door had a deadbolt on it, inside and out. The windows were bolted shut, and they also noticed large chains as if they had powerful guard dogs before. Again, this is something that I read that Garth disputes. Outside of this odd finding, everything seems fine, and so the Shermans continue on moving their things and settling into their new home. Not long after that first day, the family is out by their truck unloading some things from the back when they notice a very large wolf out in one of their pastures. It's kind of walking in a strange weaving pattern and coming straight towards them. It's 3 times the size of a regular wolf, and it made its way up to the family calmly and without fear or without even any hesitation. It had shiny gray fur and light blue eyes and is so docile that Terry is able to pet the thing. Which, by the way, I keep saying Terry. In the book, he's referred to as Tom Gorman instead of Terry Sherman because they wanted to keep their anonymity. I don't know at what point their name got out there. I think their name may have been out there from the first time that it was written about, and then they changed it for the book so they didn't get a whole lot of publicity.
Yeah.
So sorry to the Shermans if you still like to be called Gorman, but
I mean, you can.
I was getting confused.
Yeah, you can Google it if you really want to find stuff out. So
yeah,
if it's readily available for you to see, I don't see why it would be
that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I hope so. Their cattle seemed alarmed except for one calf, but the creature just stood there with the family. Very suddenly, the Shermans watched as this strange creature raced over to their livestock pen and took one of the calves, that same calf, by its nose, attempting to drag it through the bars of the corral. Terry and his son did all that they could to get the creature to release their animal, but nothing worked. That's when Terry Sherman took out his gun and shot at the animal at point blank range. So it was like right there, shot at it. Even this did nothing to stop the wolf. Another shot rang out from Terry, but the beast was unharmed. Instead, it released the calf and stood there looking at the father and son as if it hadn't just been hit with a bullet, which should have killed it by now. Several more shots were fired, but the beast casually trotted away back in the direction it came. There was no blood, and the animal seemed completely unfazed. So they stood there in shock, like, this thing should be on the ground. There is not even a drop of blood. Watched it kind of trot away at a quick speed, and they're like, we gotta go follow this. What is this? Raced after it, following its tracks for a mile or so before they abruptly ended, leaving no trace of where this monster could have gone. This was only the beginning.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So literally the tracks just disappeared.
Did the cow live?
The cow lived. Okay. This one did. Warning, there are going to be some like talks of harm to animals a little bit later. So if you don't like that, we'll have timestamps and stuff and I'll make sure to mark it just so you know. The Shermans saw a large beast like this one on a few occasions, and each time there was an immense odor that could be smelled from many yards away. Sometimes they would just smell the scent and not even see the creature.
Ooh.
Gwen claimed to see it once while driving down through the property. She slammed on her brakes and this thing stopped and looked right at her through the windshield. It was so tall, it was just looking at her through the windshield. She goes to the authorities and identifies it as a dire wolf, but dire wolves are extinct. And even if she misidentified the creature, no wolves have existed in the area since the 1920s. So there have not been wolves in that area for many decades at this point.
I have a lot of thoughts. I'm taking it all in.
After the creatures came the voices and other strange phenomenon. The Shermans reported hearing voices outside speaking in a language they did not recognize. From the sounds of the noise, it was thought that they couldn't be more than 25 feet away because it was there. They could hear them, but looking in all directions, there was nobody in sight. Even his dogs seemed to notice that something was not right because as the voices were heard, they went crazy, barking, mad, and dashed back to their home as if in fear.
Oh.
So even the dogs were like,
Something's not right.
Spooky here.
Yeah.
Terry and Gwen both reported hearing sounds like machinery and metal clinking with no one and nothing capable of making that noise in sight. Sensations of things flying by their heads while on walks out in pastures, though nothing is in sight, begins to occur and the family begins to experience something akin to ghostly activity. There was an occasion where Gwen arrived home from grocery shopping and put all of the groceries away in the cupboard. Only when she returned to the kitchen several minutes later, so she walked off into another room, came back, she found that everything was back on the table and bagged up as if she hadn't put them away at all. She was the only one home at the time and never heard a sound from the other room to indicate that there were things being moved around or cupboards being opened and closed. She was like, maybe, am I remembering wrong? Did I actually not? You know, just kind of trying to rationalize it in her mind. But there were several more occasions of things like this happening. Gwen would go into the bathroom and take a shower and she'd have just a towel and a hairbrush sitting on the bathroom counter and she'd get out and the brush would just be gone. And she's the only one home.
Duendes.
Maybe. It's possible. Terry would be out in the fields working and turn around and his pliers or a wrench or whatever tool he was using at the time would be nowhere in sight. Once he was digging a hole for a new fence post and he stopped to take a drink. But when he came back, the large auger, so they're like 70 pounds. They're big if you've never seen one. He was using to dig the hole, just vanished. He went back to the house to get onto his children for messing with him, thinking that they came out there and were picking on him or something. Yeah. But to his surprise, Gwen told him they had been in the house doing their homework the whole time. Things of this size don't just disappear into thin air. And he later found it in a tree.
What?
This 70+ pound tool dangling from a branch as if it had been thrust up there by unseen hands. And they're the only ones on the ranch. And at this point, there was only one way in and out, and they'd have to pass by the house to get onto the ranch. It's not long after this that the first lights are spotted on the property by the Shermans. Terry claimed to have seen bright lights out about 50 yards in front of him while out for a walk one night, thinking it was an RV because it was just two big bright lights or another vehicle that had gotten lost and ended up on his land. He began walking towards it and he thought maybe he could give them directions and send the people back on the road.
Yeah.
But as he walked toward the lights, they seemed to rise into the air and move at a quick speed away from him. Eventually, Terry lost sight of the lights, but this wouldn't be the only time that he and his family would see strange lights in the sky. So they saw a lot of like very large somethings out on their land all the time.
Would you stay? Well, I mean, a lot of time you don't really have a option.
I mean, you kind of have to, especially he's poured his whole like business. Like this is his ranch. This is his livelihood. On separate occasions, both Terry and Gwen, and I'm assuming the children as well, would see strange lights in the sky and crafts that looked like they could be military. But there are no bases operating nearby and no reason for something like this to be over their property. The strange crafts will hover above their land and emit what looked like colored lights before disappearing altogether. So it was kind of like it was sending out lights on some occasions. Shortly after the strange lights are seen by the Sherman family, some of their cattle begin to go missing. So
no.
This is the part, guys. He searches high and low for his animals, but it's like they have just vanished into thin air, never to be seen again. As I said before, this is extremely unusual for Terry, as he has been known his whole career to be able to keep more cattle than his counterparts. And what's even stranger is they aren't dying, just disappearing altogether. He has no clue where, it was like 2 or 3 of them at this point. He has no clue where they went.
This is crazy because when I think alien abduction, I think UFO taking a cow.
That's like the image, you know?
Why is that the thing?
I don't know where that started. By the time the snow begins to melt on the property, another of their cattle meets its end. But this time, Terry finds it, and he doesn't know exactly what to make of it. There is a circular hole cut into its left eyeball, but nothing else seems to be wrong with it. He does, however, notice a faint chemical smell that slowly dissipates in the wind not long after he finds the animal. So he doesn't even know what could have made this hole and have killed this cow.
That's so sad.
Yes, and it gets worse. Terry's son is out working on the ranch when he comes across one of the cattle stuck down in a ravine, having trouble climbing back up through the mud. He makes a mental note as to where the animal is and goes about the task that he's currently working on, but told himself that he'd be back shortly to help it back up and get it back to the rest of his herd.
Mm-hmm.
This was minutes, like probably 10, maybe less than 10 minutes.
I'm already really sad, just the thought of it struggling.
When he returns just minutes later, the cow is still there, but it's lying completely still on the ground. When he jumps down to check on it, he notices that it's no longer breathing, and it has a hole cut out of its rectum, a surgically precise hole, and all of its innards seem to be missing. Even stranger, there is not a drop of blood anywhere in sight. So this took minutes. No blood. No tracks, no trucks, no people around that he saw.
What are we talking about? What are we doing?
Cattle mutilations.
Why?
I don't
know.
For
what?
I don't know. The Shermans continue losing cattle in this horrific mutilated way, and no trace of predators or vehicle tracks or even other human tracks are sighted near any of the bodies. I think overall he lost about 7 or so.
So sad.
Yeah, there is no logical explanation as to how these cattle are dying and why there isn't any blood left. And they aren't the only ranchers in the area who have experienced this. Several ranchers across the country and even near the Shermans Ranch have experienced the same thing for decades. It might even be happening all over the world, but I know that it's happened in America for a very long time.
Yeah.
There were some in Texas not too long ago.
This is one of the worst things you've ever told me.
I can't believe you didn't know about it.
No.
Federal investigations have taken place, but the answers seem unsatisfactory to some of the ranchers who have experienced these losses. So I think there have been 2 federal investigations, if I'm not mistaken, and basically they came back and said, oh, it's predators, or oh, it's people. It's like poacher type people who are just coming in and doing this.
Okay.
Who knows why? But the farmers are like, no, like it cannot be a predator. It's not the same. Like I've seen animals who've been eaten by predators, and this happens like within minutes of it dying.
And there's no blood.
And there's no blood.
How do you explain that?
I don't know. You'd have to read the reports. I did not. I just kind of read a quick summary of this is what they found.
But if I was investigating something like that and there was no explanation, I'd just be like,
it has to be.
The closest thing is, okay, poachers, whatever. Because what else? If you're not looking supernatural, paranormal.
Yeah, I don't know. There was one instance where Terry followed the tracks through the snow of one of his livestock. So he realized one was missing. So he saw the tracks. So he followed him along. He walked along for several yards until very suddenly the tracks were gone. So just like the big wolf type creature, these tracks ended in the snow. And it's not like it's easy to get rid of your tracks in the snow, especially if you're an animal.
I was
just walking
a cow?
along. Yeah. The easily followed tracks just vanished. There were no footprints or tire tracks or anything to explain the phenomenon. Not long after, he found the animal dead and in a pile of broken tree limbs. So it's like underneath trees, and like the trees, the implication seemed to me that it had fallen.
Like it was dropped from high up?
Yes, but that's kind of how it read, but I wasn't there. I don't know. I didn't talk to them personally, you know? Once again, another instance of cattle mutilation occurred while the Shermans were out tagging their newborn calves. They tagged a calf and left it with its mother as they moved on further down the property. It was a clear day, and they could still see where the mother and her calf were standing back behind them. Suddenly, their dog started barking, and the mother of the calf was frantic, like running around very loud. They raced over to find that the calf was nothing but bone and hide. 75 pounds of meat stripped away from the calf without a drop of blood missing or tracks to indicate anything had been there. Just bone and hide, nothing else. In like a 30-minute time span. And on a clear day, as the cattle mutilations continue, so do the sightings of strange lights in the sky. On one occasion, Terry and Gwen both spot a blue orb floating in the sky. It dipped down by their heads and zipped past them, and they could swear that they heard a buzzing noise as if it were electrically charged. When they were finally able to get a closer look at the object, it looked as though there was a blue liquid sloshing around inside of it. They saw the blue orb on several occasions, but the final straw for the Sherman family came in May of 1996 when Terry was out for a walk with his 3 dogs. Another big warning here.
Why the dogs?
The blue orb came racing by once again, and this time the dogs were chasing after it. The orb would dip down low and then shoot back up in the sky a little further out, as if it were playing with or taunting the animals, investigating them, checking them out, maybe. The orb eventually took off into the woods, and Terry allowed his dogs to chase after it. But not long after they went in after it, Terry heard yelping coming from his animals. When he finally was able to track down where they went, I believe it was the next morning because he was afraid for his life to venture into the woods at night after hearing that and seeing that.
I would be going in. I don't care.
He found a clearing with 3 circles of what looked like charred grass, and in each circle lay a pile of incinerated flesh. Whatever this thing was had now taken his beloved dogs, and he wasn't having it anymore. Sorry, very sad.
Horrible.
By that summer, Terry hesitantly gave an interview to the Desert News about what had been going on since he had bought the property. This article caught the attention of entrepreneur and owner of an aerospace company, Robert Bigelow. Not Bigelow Tea.
Oh my gosh.
Different Bigelow. He was fascinated by space and UFOs and thought the innumerable encounters at the Sherman Ranch could provide him with the opportunity to study this phenomenon with all the instruments that science had to offer at the time. Bigelow bought the ranch from the Shermans and brought in 2 agencies, the National Institute of Discovery Science, or NIDS, and the Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Studies, or BASS. They began their investigations right away. So these were his little agencies. NIDS. Or some call it NIDSI.
Interesting.
And he is, I think he's still alive, a very, very rich guy. Very, very wealthy, did very well for himself. But this was his project.
Into this stuff?
Yes. This is where Hunt for the Skinwalker picks up. So the book. George Knapp covered some of the experiences in several articles spanning part of the time that Bigelow's NIDS were involved. Aside from biochemist Colm Kelleher, who helped write the book, the team consisted of several scientists with different disciplines in physics, biology. There were anthropologists, law enforcement officers, veterinarians, all attempting to get to the bottom of what was going on here. He purchased the ranch for $200,000 from the Shermans and asked them to stay on for a little bit while the team got caught up to date with all of the events claimed to have occurred on the property.
When was this?
1996.
Man. You should have been buying property instead of being born.
I know, man.
$200,000 for like 400 acres.
Kind of lowballed them.
And they've also been...
It was probably worth more like
being...
400,000, 500,000.
But they've been being tortured,
so they were
tormented.
Like anything. Wow. I read in one place that the family was actually sleeping all together in the living room when Bigelow came.
Hey, even if
check it out.
Scary things aren't happening, that's my dream.
That we all just sleep in one spot.
Yes.
So Bigelow set up surveillance all around the property where the Shermans claimed that the bulk of the activity had occurred thus far and set off to find a scientific solution to the problems at the ranch. So it wasn't like a fully surveilled thing because it's a lot of property. So he kind of said, oh, well, a lot of things happen here. Let's just put it up.
Yeah.
Most of what was encountered seemed to be at random, and it was hard to capture evidence and proof of what had been observed for nearly 2 years prior to the purchase of by Bigelow. So even like they'd set them up here because that's where the activity happened. And then it would happen over here where it never happened before. So they'd move the cameras and then it would start happening over here again.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't want to be caught.
Yes. It was almost like it was trying to evade.
Oh, that just gave me a chill.
The team attempted to approach each claim and situation as a scientist rather than a staunch believer. They wanted this to be a true scientific study into what seems to have been plaguing the area for decades. They looked into every avenue. Was it a gravity anomaly of some kind? Were there psychoactive plants in the area causing hallucinations? Were the Shermans simply lying for publicity? It seems that even to this day, nothing has been definitively proven to be causing the phenomena, but Bigelow gave it a try. And even with the cameras about, strange things continued to happen. The Shermans were leaving the property one day, exasperated by all that had been happening to them. They were losing more cattle than they ever had before. They were constantly bombarded by lights in the sky, of which they knew nothing of their origin or intentions. The entire family was afraid of what could possibly lie in wait out on their 512 acres of land. As they drove on their property down to the only entrance leading in and out of the property at the time, they looked over at a corral and commented to one another that the 4 prize bulls that they had in there would help them make like a good portion of their income for that year. And they just couldn't take losing any of them. So they were looking, they're like, man, we've been losing a lot, but if we lost any of these, this would put a major, like we're already kind of like struggling.
Yeah.
Not a lot of margins here. These have to make it. As if whatever they sensed on the property with them could hear them speaking, the couple returned home to see the corral empty and not a bull in sight. They parked their truck and frantically looked all over for the animals. 4 2,000-pound animals couldn't simply disappear, and they hadn't even been gone that long. After looking everywhere they could think, Terry decided to check a very unlikely place. See, they had an old trailer parked out near the pens. It was old. They hadn't really been in it for a while now. The trailer had been locked with a piece of wire wrapped around the opening in the back to keep the door shut. Everything looked untouched, but just to be sure, having nowhere else to turn to, he took a peek inside. To his surprise, all 4 of those massive bulls were crammed inside the small trailer. They were packed in there, calm as if in a trance.
What?
As soon as Terry yells out to his wife that he had found them, it's as if they were all woken up and they went wild. Some places said that they kicked down the doors and like stampeded out of this trailer. Terry alerted the NIDS team, who rushed to the scene to evaluate. They found that the corral, like the part of the corral that was near the pen, trailer, had been magnetized. Whatever lured them there from their enclosure left a magnetic signature that slowly faded as time passed. Like within the next 48 hours, it was completely gone.
Yeah, but it left residual
almost
stuff.
like they were pulled
What?
in some way. And the magnetic field was like all weird.
That is so strange.
Very
like,
weird.
I wish I understood all of that stuff.
Me too.
Because I'm just like, wow.
That sounds important.
Yeah.
Me too. The family weren't the only ones to witness this bizarre activity. A few researchers from Bigelow's team had their fair share of encounters as well. I say a few, like all of them.
Yeah.
All of them. One story told in the books was when Kelleher and a few others were out at night conducting their investigations when they spotted a very large and unidentifiable creature in the trees. It had bright yellow piercing eyes and stared down at them almost as if it were observing. The team attempted to shoot it down and thought they had when they heard it land not far away. They raced to find what the animal could have been, but when they made it to the spot where it should have been, it was nowhere to be found. In fact, the only indication that anything had been there at all was a very large oval print that looked like it had claws protruding out the back. By the looks of the depth of the track, it was a very large and heavy creature.
It jumped down and ran away.
Yeah, or flew away.
I just freaked myself out. Yeah.
The team working for NIDS, one by one, all experienced some version of everything the Shermans had been seeing. So they all encountered something like what had been reported already. It was as if the creature, beings, or whatever had been causing mayhem were intelligent and knew where the crew had set up their cameras, because each time something happened, it was far from view of the cameras. And if anything was to have occurred in view of the cameras, the video would simply stop. Or in one case, the camera wires were ripped from the ground with no image of a culprit in sight. They saw, it was like the cameras were looking, and then at 8:30, it stopped. And when they went to go look at these cameras to check out like what was going on, the wires were ripped from the ground. The tape that was holding like part of the wires up there it was just completely shredded and ripped off. But there was no image of anything being there. Like even walking up to where the camera was.
Does it just not want to be seen and found out, or is it evil?
I don't know.
Causing mayhem on purpose just to watch the world burn.
I mean, I assume it's more so doesn't want to be seen.
But
just
why?
because like no one has died or anything. Like it hasn't.
Cows have.
Yeah, but
The dogs.
that was more like I could see that the thing could think like this is a threat to me.
Yeah.
With the dogs. With the cows, maybe
Research.
experiments. Yeah, research.
That's what it feels like.
As with the Shermans' many encounters and sightings with the lights in the sky, the NIDS team also witnessed plenty. According to the book, it was concluded that the white orbs in the sky seemed to be intelligently controlled somehow, and sometimes associated with the cattle mutilations. The blue orbs would often cause a very primal and instinctual sense of fear and dread in the people and animals when they are around. Not to mention their association with the loss of the Sherman's 3 dogs. Even before the blue orbs were seen, a lot of people would feel like fight or flight kick in.
Yeah.
And then the blue orbs would be around.
Okay, so this is bad then. If people are feeling scared,
Maybe.
then it's bad. Well, I don't think maybe, because
If
there's
it's
like
something
a fear.
otherworldly, if it's like an innate like biological response.
No, okay. There
The
is
ancient aliens.
there's the fear of the unknown and just kind of being curious and scared about what you don't know. To not even see it and feel that sense of dread, it's like
Something's not right.
your body knows, your spirit knows that it's like negative.
It could mean danger for you.
Yeah.
All the lights seemed to be interested in getting as close as they could to what was happening and caused distress in many who encountered them. Now, the creepiest observance, and the one that guides my final thoughts on this strange place, which we'll get to, happened at about 2:30 in the morning in August of 1997. 2 scientists were out with their cameras and equipment on a bluff, just looking out at the night sky, when a strange light appeared about 150 yards down below, hovering close to the ground. One of them pulls out the binoculars and sees that it is a yellow orb. As he stares down at it, it seems to be growing bigger at first, but then he realizes that it's opening up, and through the yellow light, he can see what looks like blue sky behind it.
What? Whoa. Okay.
It becomes like this tunnel.
Portal.
This tunnel or portal is opening up bigger until a creature or humanoid figure of some kind crawls out of it and off into the darkness of that August night. As soon as the figure is out of sight, the tunnel closes and the light disappears entirely, leaving the two baffled. Now, this scientist is a rational guy and knows what he just saw is impossible to explain, but he knows he saw it. The two make their way down to the spot where they saw the orb and tunnel, take measurements to indicate if there were any electromagnetic spikes or radioactive detection or anything like that. but nothing. It's as if it wasn't there, or at the very least, the tools they used were unable to detect any changes to the surroundings. Now, by the end of the events of the books, Bigelow and his team are still researching on the land, but in just a few short years, they have encountered over 100 incidents or strange paranormal and alien activity, and they still don't have any definitive answers, at least none that they share with the public anyway. Many of the scientists and investigators admitted to having, quote, difficulty obtaining evidence consistent with scientific publication, unquote. Could the land truly be cursed? Is it haunted? Are there aliens conducting their own research out in the big open landscape? Does a Bigfoot-like creature call these bluffs home? Is there some kind of portal or interdimensional travel occurring here, like in the case of the tunnel? Maybe their eyes are lying to everyone, or maybe they're all hallucinating together, caused by some unknown plant species or seismic activity in the area or something.
I was going to say that too.
They just don't know. This is exactly what the U.S. government wanted to know as well.
Ooh.
The book was read, or so it was said, by a defense intelligence agent named James Lakatsky, and he was convinced enough to want to take a closer look into things. So he contacted Bigelow to get his own investigations up and running on the land. He supposedly had his own unexplainable encounter while there and decided it was worth the investment to look deeper. Bigelow met with his friend and Senator Harry Reid, as well as Senator Ted Stevens, and they both agreed to add a line into the Defense Department's budget, appropriating $22 million for a study known as the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program. And they were contracting that out to Bigelow's company for studying the UFOs and other phenomenon in 2007. So it was meant to study the ranch, as well as other places where strange things are happening. The program was canceled just 2 years later, and by 2011, Bigelow's government funding ran out. He continued on using his own money, but by 2016, the ranch was sold once again to Adamantium Real Estate. The company was shrouded in mystery for a few years, as the owner wanted his name out of the spotlight. He wanted to focus on the ranch and no one to really know who he was or what he was doing. But he intended to continue with the research, amping up the surveillance and adding newer, more state-of-the-art equipment than was used by the end of Bigelow's ownership.
I'm glad that it's going out, as far as you've told me so far, that it's going to people that aren't just like, oh, let's take this land and throw a Walmart in there. Let's build some houses. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I like that they're keeping it and just continuing research instead of just ignoring it.
And they're using it as a cattle ranch too.
Well, yeah, but you know what
The
I mean?
cows are still there. Yeah, I do.
It's not being developed.
None of the data collected or research done on the ranch was part of the sale when it changed hands, so Adamantium and crew had a fresh start into their own investigations, not skewed by anything done previously. It eventually was revealed in 2020 that the new owner of the ranch officially renamed Skinwalker Ranch, and that was like TM, copyright, whatever it is. Like he chose this name and it is his and you can't use that name.
Oh, and it's officially called that?
Yes, officially.
I thought it was just like the nickname.
No. They officially call it that. It was entrepreneur, business leader, and near billionaire Brandon Fugal. It's unclear. Bigelow and Fugal might both be billionaires, or at the very least, very close. Hundreds of millions of dollars. When he bought the ranch, he was mostly a skeptic, but was intrigued. He believed there was life out there, but he didn't necessarily believe
everything that was
happening. Yeah. Only months into his ownership did he experience his first encounter with the strange and vaguely paranormal events of the ranch that so many before him had seen. He hired a physicist to live on the property full time, along with the caretakers of the property and animals still grazing the land. Things really ramped up when in 2020, the History Channel decided to bring in their documentarians and create the show The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. The property now has cameras in many places all over the property, as well as a large fence to keep curious onlookers out. So like I said, you're not allowed there. They are conducting research. Do not come to them. They've had to turn many people away who are like, it's on my bucket list. And they're like,
no.
Get out. They don't want to compromise any of their research because it really seems that they are set on doing this right and gathering up data that they can present in an official capacity for peer review. So they really want to bring something together. They've hired several people, like one of the people running kind of the experiments and stuff, like has a PhD and is supposedly like very credentialed.
This is crazy because I went into this knowing absolutely nothing about it. I thought we were just going to talk about like, there's possibly SWs there. Woo.
Yeah.
But this is like real.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's real. It's not just like some legend. There's people looking into it.
And enough so much so that the government has looked into it and found it worthwhile to put $22 million into
crazy.
it.
That's really crazy.
They have alarm systems to alert those working on the experience and observations to changes in the environment, and many more pieces of equipment to measure the experiences that are still occurring every day. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of everything that they bring on to the land and what exactly they're using for research because I've not watched the show. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but supposedly it's a lot.
I mean, it sounds like it already.
Fugal also claimed in an interview to be working closely with the Native American elders in the area since he first purchased the property. Quote, "We have been reaching out to tribal leaders in the spirit of friendship and collaboration. We are focused on science, but there may be historical and cultural aspects related to the property that we will need to carefully consider and study in the future. One of our full-time caretakers is a credentialed and published anthropologist, which I think underscores the fact that we are committed to the history of the property and area," unquote.
Nice.
So he is taking the history of the land into account. At least he was at the beginning. I mean, I can't say exactly what he's doing now.
Was there a switch up?
But that's what he said kind of towards like in 2020.
2020? Good.
Because I was thinking the whole time, I was like, why aren't they asking the people who've lived there?
When you first said it was bought by some real estate guy, I thought you were about to tell me, and now there are two suburban neighborhoods. I was about to be really upset.
Now it is fenced off with high security and guards and gates that you have to, like, know codes to get into.
So even if we don't believe anything, any of the stories you've told so far, there's something going on.
At the very least, they just don't want people there.
Yeah.
He also doesn't confirm or deny any dealings with the U.S. government anymore. So in another interview, when asked if the military still had any involvement, he said, quote, "I am not at liberty to discuss details regarding various investigations, briefings that are going on at present relative at the ranch. But I can tell you that when certain phenomena are being recorded, are being observed, are being monitored, how do I say this? What is being witnessed at the ranch has significant national security implications," unquote. So he can neither confirm nor deny any involvement with the Pentagon or the military in any way.
But when people say, I can't not confirm or deny, you're confirming.
Maybe. Or he's just trying to add some more mystery.
Maybe he likes tension. That's true.
If I were a betting man, I'd put money on they are at least informed.
Yeah. This is not at all what I expected, though.
It's wild. So what are the people working on the ranch experiencing now? Well, among some of the other typical events that so many have endured, the team also claims to have a myriad of encounters and measurable occurrences. Many of their tools and pieces of equipment, like their GPS, can be unpredictable and malfunctions at times.
Mm-hmm.
Several people who have conducted research on the grounds have had unexplainable illnesses crop up after spending some time out there, including Thomas Winterton, who oversees the maintenance of the property and assists in some of the investigations. He had to be hospitalized with life-threatening swelling on the brain and collections of fluid between the skull and the scalp. The team thinks it may be because he attempted to dig on the ranch.
Oh.
There were several inconclusive tests that seemed to indicate that the usual causes of injuries such as these were not to blame. He had tests done, and the journalist, I think it was Vice, if I'm not mistaken, said he saw his medical records. Like,
how?
Winterton brought him his medical records and said,
okay.
See, like, they did all these tests and said, we don't know why this is happening to you. And he's never had any trouble like that before. Skin inflammation, nausea, and extreme lassitude causing some to go to the emergency room have been experienced on the ranch. So visitors have experienced these things, sometimes sending them to the ER.
Yeah. How can we get invited?
I don't know. We can call and be like, hey. I think Post Malone went there.
I would believe that.
If I'm not mistaken.
He lives in Utah, right?
I have no
He's like a
clue.
doomsday prepper.
That's intriguing. There have been several occasions where the team has witnessed unidentifiable aerial phenomenon, making a believer out of all of them. Oftentimes, their sensors will, quote, go crazy when they see the lights hovering in the fields and they attempt to capture any data they can from these encounters. In an article written by Vice, a few of the employees working out at the ranch detailed some of their experiences when they first started working there. And I thought I would just go ahead and read quotes from that because it was kind of them giving their own
experiences.
Experience.
Yeah.
So Eric Bard, principal investigator, his phone buzzed with a notification indicating movement had been detected in the center of the control room. So they have a control center where they can monitor all the things going on, and they've got state-of-the-art, like, everything. Anyway, so he checked the camera feed and he found nothing. But the notifications continued to ping for 5 hours. Just ding, 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 like there's something there.
My house on Halloween.
For 5 hours, nothing unusual appeared on the camera feed until Bard, out of frustration, said aloud, quote, if you have something to show me, show me. If you have something to tell me, tell me. He said that immediately after making that statement, the pixels on the camera feed screen began to melt downwards. So he took a screenshot of this. This is like, what is happening? And at first glance, the image appears to be one of the typical malfunctioning software program. But in the bottom right of the screen, the words Camera 1 Living Room had dissolved into I Living, with the text moving upward while everything else on the screen migrated downward.
No.
Quote, we have consulted numerous technologists about the incident. None can provide an explanation, unquote. And that was Brandon Fugal.
I don't like that, actually.
He said, okay, I've got something to tell you.
living.
Another incident. One evening, Winterton and his wife went to the ranch because Bard told him that he wanted a hard backup of the video files due to some cameras failing that day. He asked Winterton to use one of the external hard drives to download the videos from that night. And as Winterton began the backup, he and his wife heard a banging sound coming from one of the back bedrooms. Quote, "It sounded like someone had an electrical cord and they were smacking it against the wall. So I jump up and run back there.
Yeah.
Nobody was in there. I've spent tons of times in the command center. I know the usual sounds that it makes. What the water heater sounds like when it turns on. This was different. So we're freaking out at this point. I sit back down at the computer and the download is taking forever. Then, all of a sudden, like someone was standing between us, I hear, 'Leave now.' I look at Melissa. She looks at me. Then it happens again. 'You need to leave now.' So Tom...
You need to leave.
Yes. Tom and Melissa Winterton both jumped up and did as they were told. Quote, "We got into the truck and we got the hell out of there.
Yep.
I'm trying to text and call Eric, but my phone won't respond. It's all frozen. My wife is trying to get it to work. I try. It's like 10 minutes go by and eventually the phone responds. Then it just dies. It started to work for a second or two. Then the batteries are totally dead." Is it protecting them or saying like, I'm about to mess stuff up and you need to get out of here?
I don't know. Because what is it? We don't know.
We don't know.
Wow.
Okay, so here's another experience, but this one is by the caretakers. Quote, "When we first took over the ranch, Bigelow had an older couple who were the caretakers. They liked living on the ranch, so they stayed here until about a year and a half ago when they decided to leave for health reasons. One night in 2016, they called me, it was probably 2 a.m., and said someone was on the ranch. There was this old basketball they kept by the front porch. They said someone was bouncing it up against the house. Kids looking for kicks, overzealous paranormal enthusiasts, and UFO investigators occasionally tried to trespass on the ranch. So Winterton, who only lives about 15 minutes away, jumped in his truck, pistol in hand, and sped to the property. Quote, "When I got there, I made sure they were okay, and I just walked through the house making sure no one else was there. I told them to stay inside and went out to see if anyone was walking around. Using one of the thermal cameras they kept on the ranch, Winterton began going to all the sheds and outbuildings, scanning the fields and the mesa. Nothing. Quote, "I had this feeling I was being watched, but no one was there. I get my shotgun from my truck, and just for good measure, I go to the front yard there and blast a few shots into the air and yell a few obscenities, just to scare them." He decided to search the old homestead since a lot of trespassers go there to these buildings. Quote, "I take my truck up the road, and as I start to get closer, I start to get really scared. Just this feeling that takes over. Then I hear this voice as clear as you and me talking right now that says, 'Stop, turn around.' I lean out the window with my spotlight out and start searching around. Nothing. So I get out and blast a few more shots and yell some more and never found anything."
I just need to know if it's a warning or if it's a warning.
In an interview about this time starting his endeavor at the ranch, Fugal said that he had no idea what exactly was going on at the property, but thought it could be some kind of intelligence from another dimension or reality. But he said that he and his team are going about their research objectively, not letting their preconceived notions get in the way. There are plenty of theories as to what could be going on at the infamous ranch. As you could probably guess, most critics and skeptics believe it's all a hoax.
Well, that's with everything.
Maybe the Shermans invented the story to get out of there after not faring as well as they did in their previous town. Though this would be strange considering they only received $200,000 for the land, which seems like a small amount for the size of the property. And there were buildings and things all around.
Yeah, but if you're struggling bad enough and you need it, you'll be like,
I'll take anything.
Yeah.
It is possible that people got a little worked up over the insane reports coming from the property. But how is it that so many people, even those who describe themselves as skeptics, will have experiences while out at the ranch? So even Brandon Fugal, like there was a quote of him saying, there are some like respectable people who have come and visited the ranch. I won't name them.
Yeah.
But they had experiences that they will attest to.
I don't know.
Plenty of rumors have been spread from the time that Bigelow operated the ranch. He was very secretive for the most part about their investigations, and that could have something to do with the fact that the government was involved. Some believe the ranch could have been a testing site for secret government weapons. Others claimed that there must be an underground alien base since no one was allowed to dig there, and there were plenty of sounds that came from unseen places. So are the sounds just the tunnels underneath the ground and they're hearing whatever talk underneath, and that's why they're not allowed to dig, and that's why they keep like dipping down low into the water or whatever, or their entrance and exit in Bottle Hollow? There are also some who simply believe that this area is just a hotspot that for some reason extraterrestrials are interested in visiting for many decades, performing experiments of their own maybe. I mentioned it a few times throughout the episode, but there are still some theories that posit all of the experiences are hallucinations caused by geophysical processes or some kind of flora that exists out in the basin.
And I think that's a good theory as well.
A hypothesis to like go about and look for.
Yeah.
Now, this is completely unproven, but there are people out there that believe seismic activity, tectonic shifts, and geomagnetic fields could affect the portion of the brain that causes hallucinations.
I mean, that's possible. I mean, not proven, but that's an interesting theory.
I alluded to this earlier, but the most interesting theory to me is the possibility of interdimensional travel and visitors from another universe or parallel dimensions.
Especially with that portal thing opening.
The portal could be operated in that area for one reason or another. Like maybe that's just where it is. I don't know how portals work. This could explain strange creatures appearing and disappearing suddenly without a trace. The cow that disappeared mid-stride, the portal spotted by the investigators, and many other encounters here at the ranch. As to who is operating the portal or wormhole, or if it is even controllable, is a big question. But I find it so interesting to think about.
Too.
If this portal defies the laws of physics that we know, this could also be why the teams of investigators are having a hard time capturing data and proof. We just don't understand it yet. So if we can't understand what we're even looking at, how do we measure it?
I don't know. You get it? It's like in crime and stuff. When you get DNA, you're like, eventually we'll be able to use this, and they do.
Yes.
So it's like, okay,
they're collecting all of this.
Everything. So in 15 years, when that technology becomes available, they have it and they can tell us.
They have the data. Yeah.
Love.
So it's possible.
That's cool.
I don't know. That's my favorite theory.
Me too.
I also do like the underground base of some kind. I think that's fun.
That's feasible.
Fun to think about. I read on Reddit, I was kind of looking to see what people thought about this. I saw someone say that they're still in the hypothesis part of their experiments, which is fine. But to be in the hypothesis mode for almost 10 years of owning the property is a little crazy to me too.
I don't think I believe that though.
But who knows? I mean, if they are looking into something that we on Earth do not know or understand, have never encountered.
How would they know?
It may just be that whatever is out there truly doesn't want to be seen. And they probably have some technology that we just couldn't even comprehend. And they just don't want to show themselves. And I want them to show themselves.
I don't know. It depends if they're scary or not.
If they're good.
Yeah.
So on the show, they like often shoot rockets up in the sky. And I don't know the exact... Again, I've never seen the show, but I've seen clips of them shooting rockets and like traveling back and forth and doing all this stuff. It kind of reminds me of, you know, those images of like uncontacted tribes where they're like shooting bows and arrows up at helicopters and planes. That's kind of what it reminded me of. And like, are we just, as we've talked about before, a primitive species that they are coming down? They're sending probes, those orbs are maybe just probes, and they're just collecting data on us.
Yep. And there's like students coming down from like the local college and just, you know, doing research,
investigating.
That is a really interesting theory, and I feel like that could be something that's possible in this world, even if it's not here. We might be being observed
in some way. Yeah,
which I think so.
It's possible.
I would believe
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. But that is Skinwalker Ranch.
I am leaving feeling very different than I thought I was going to. Very different.
I can't believe you didn't really know what it was.
No clue. I'd never heard of it.
I guess you're not. We're in different worlds.
We really are. If it wasn't for this podcast, I wouldn't know any of this stuff. The only thing I knew was like ghosts and demons. That was it.
But we are far past that now, my friend.
I'm deep in it. I'm very deep in it.
So let us know what you think. What are your theories? What are your opinions? Do you think it's all a hoax? Do you think there's something there? Do you think the government is involved? Is there alien bases beneath the surface? Are there US bases underneath the surface?
Or is it all just a bunch of hoopla and there's nothing out there? But I don't think so.
No.
There's
to put that much money into it, it feels they would have to be master manipulators to get that much money out of all of these people.
I don't know. There's definitely something going on there.
That would be an interesting theory though, because in 2016 he bought it and he started doing his own experiments, and then he realized there is nothing here. I have been hoodwinked. And he was like, hey, History Channel, come film.
Come out here. It's crazy.
So he's like making a little money off of it.
That right there.
But I don't know, maybe.
I don't know the guy.
I want to believe that strange things are happening there, because that's a lot of people to get in on the hoax.
Yes. Because you can.
And the only one refuting any of this is Garth.
No. Even if it was a big conspiracy, one person's gonna slip up. You can't trust that many people to keep up a lie.
Yeah, and it was dozens and dozens of people working on these experiments over the last 30 years or so.
Something's going on. Conclusion, something's going on out there.
Something's weird. So again, like I said, let us know in the comments what you think, because I'm intrigued. I want to know. I want a conversation with you guys. I want to see what y'all are thinking. Like this video if you liked it. Share with your friends if you feel compelled to do so. And subscribe for more. Sorry, we have been a little all over the place with our posts. I have been sick. I have been going through it along with my whole family. And it's just been like the entire month of March.
Horrible.
barely treading water. It was a lot. We were sick for like almost all of March.
Yeah.
I'm catching up. I'm trying.
Yeah, it's bad. So sorry. We are doing our best. Please don't yell at us. But also, I posted on Instagram asking if y'all want to keep Mondays and Thursdays, or if y'all would want Mondays and Fridays to like switch it up. And the majority said
They don't care.
Monday and Friday, girl, I don't care. But some of you said don't change it or else. So if you have very strong feelings about us changing it, let me know.
Yeah, put it in the comments too.
And give me a good reason. Cited sources. But if you don't care, I'm kind of interested in, and if you're still here, leave a cow emoji.
Yes, that'll work.
I like cows.
I wish there were an emoji of an alien abducting a cow.
There's an alien emoji. You can leave an alien or a cow.
Emoji
or both.
people need to get on that.
There's a lot that I have suggestions. I have notes.
We have a list. Well, we'll see you.
I'm Miss Ungermeyer of the emojis. Goodbye.
Bye.